Meteorologist Casey Cloud back here in the Weather Center right now at 4:49 on your Sunday. I know we were on here with another stream and a little bit of a technical issue there, so that kicked us off, but somehow. But we're back on now, so we're watching this event thunderstorm warning continue till 6 p.m. for portions of Jefferson, Madison, as well as Berrien, Brooks County there, in toward the storyline. We're talking about Colquitt County, Cook County, Lanier County, Lowndes, Thomas. So definitely monitoring the situation very carefully. Some wind potential here in the storyline in towards some of these communities. Definitely, is escalating here in terms of the stronger gusts possible. You can see some of these brighter colors. We're lower down in the radar in terms of the actual height. So sometimes it makes things look a little bit less in terms of the winds, even if we're not really weakening. It's just the height of them, on the radar where, things are being read from. You would have, in general, winds a little bit weaker, but it doesn't mean it's not severe, actually. Sometimes the angle even, it could underdo it some. We saw that earlier. I know it wasn't because of that directly, but in Bainbridge, we had some, readings there on radar, and it was actually a lot stronger there toward that area. You see a pretty strong area of wind right around Naylor, though. This is right near the radar site. That's kind of concerning there on Naylor, moving right toward the Moody Air Force Base radar site there as we're tracking the situation. I see, by the way, Colquitt and Thomas being canceled out of this polygon. There's a report of hail around the Boston area and Thomas County earlier on to an inch in size, quarter size there, ping pong ball size there from Thomasville at 4:15 this afternoon. And then in southern Thomas County, 5 miles southwest of Thomasville at 4:06, there was hail to 1 inch in diameter. So definitely have to be, paying attention. You see some of those different reports popping on up there on the screen as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things, as we give you guys the very latest on what's going on here. Again, a very busy afternoon for some areas. Some areas it's been more about the cold air that's going to be coming in here, though, as we look toward Tuesday morning. We're going to have a freeze here for many of us. We're going to have wind chills in the 20s for many of our areas, and some areas could even, the most, isolated areas in Georgia, more rural, could even have some upper teen wind chills because of how chilly it's going to be. This is a very powerful system here, a very powerful frontal boundary that's going to be coming in here, and it's associated. This accent is with that, and that's why we're seeing some pretty powerful convection. I know models weren't picking up on all this, but Storm Prediction Center, to their credit, had a marginal risk out since Friday here for portions of our area here. And, that still could, verify further downstream, but it already has, a series of southwest and south central Georgia with a bunch of storm reports here, hail and wind. So, again, we have to be very mindful. I know it may not get all the way down and like Stark as much. We'll see, as we're looking here at the overall picture. Let me pull up some of the latest modeling here as the situation does progress. Again, you can kind of see those are the temperatures, but let me go ahead and I'll go ahead and put on that. You see more about Georgia there with the progression of that storm, accident, and not so much in Florida, just some weak stuff, which would be some good news. So, again, we're continuing to watch this. That warning goes until 6 o'clock. It's that one polygon, but it does include areas around Valdosta there, right in the metro. Okay, we just got a warning for Eccles now. Okay, we just got a warning for Eccles. That's going to go to 5:30 now from the Jacksonville office. They're talking about 7 miles northeast of Statenville, or over the community of Mayday until 5:30, moving northeast at 10 miles an hour, 60-mile-an-hour wind gust and quarter-size hail possibility in toward that area. So 5:30 further out, but 6 with the bigger area here with the warning box. Been with you for a while. I know that includes areas like the community of Halo, Georgia, apparently, until 5:30. Further off toward the east there. Let's put some traffic cameras, though. The Georgia 511 Georgia DOT cameras around Valdosta if we can. We'll try to see how some of these conditions are looking there, at the ground level. I know. Looking pretty nasty in some of these situations. So let me go ahead and we'll pull this on up. You see this GDOT camera. Definitely, some ominous conditions there for sure. And we just had a Gus Davis weather station around Naylor community to 45 miles an hour at 4:47. You know, definitely could have higher gusts at some of these airport centers, like what we had in Bainbridge earlier on, all the way to 70 miles an hour with the official wind gusts there on an anemometer. So that, you know, indicates the potential of these storms, and that's when we knew we are going to probably have, you know, for sure a busy afternoon ahead of us. You know, I saw some stuff in the models. I was just wanting to, you know, with this powerful system, you know, even though they weren't really going as strong, you know, with this, you know, had to remain on guard, and, you know, this has overachieved here, unfortunately. But, you know, definitely have to pay attention here in these type of situations as we give you the very latest here on what's happening. Just try to stay on top of it all here for you in toward the weather center. So 4:55 right now. Again, you can see here just northeast of Statenville. We're watching things right around I-75 here, right southeast of Kinderloo. You can see some of this nasty wind coming on in. There and toward that area. And we're just having to continue to give you guys the very latest here on that. I don't see many cameras for some reason pop up in that corridor in some of these spots. Let me see what we have with velocity further up. So I would like to get a camera in here. I don't really see any, but that's about to cross I-75 there. South side of Augusta could get some hail that, you know, maybe enough to cause some minor damage even. So, you know, get those cars in the garage real quick if you can, south side of Augusta. Not overwhelming, but still could cause some minor issues there. So again, just trying to give you guys the very latest on what's going on here. Let me see if there's any questions or comments here on this stream from any of the viewers at home. I know do have, unfortunately, that fire weather watch toward Tallahassee tomorrow. More Armageddon spots that can help out ahead of tomorrow. We don't want severe weather. We don't want lightning and the like. And then with the freeze watch for that, you know, Saturday, you know, was what we were not talking about Saturday in general, but you know, we were talking about, you know, I mean, watching it yesterday for a Tuesday morning. I know it feels like a Saturday coming up because it's a holiday, but no, Veterans Day is Tuesday there, and that's when we're going to have that freeze watch, which will probably get upgraded to a freeze warning. So, again, I'm just trying to give you guys the very latest here on what's going on. You can kind of see this wind coming right into Valdosta right now, right around US 41. Let me see if that might be an area where I can get a camera up there. You know, I think the worst is not there, but well, we'll see that camera's not working. Okay, let me try this camera. Okay, it's a little bit further north, but still showing some nasty weather, so we'll go ahead and pull it on up here as we, you know, so what we can. I mean, whatever's available. You know, we use whatever we can, but if there's not a camera available in a certain spot, we just can't show you the visual, obviously. But it's a little bit further north, south, you know, toward here's where we're watching things. State Road 7, US 41 at Valdale Road there in Lowndes County. It's definitely some volatile weather as we're looking at things on the GDOT camera there. You know, this is not fun weather to be out in. I know folks maybe, you know, just leaving, you know, watching NFL action on TV at a restaurant or something, and now they're having to deal with volatile weather conditions out on the road, or maybe waiting, you know, after the football's over, or other stuff going on to run errands, and now getting caught in the middle of some pretty nasty weather. Not ideal there around Valdosta and Lowndes County. So nothing tornadic in nature in terms of any formal warnings. Occasionally we get areas of weak rotation, but that's not the biggest threat today. Which is some good news, obviously. It's more about wind and hail here today with the overall wind pattern, the overall weather pattern. So there's your look at things, the two warnings. You see all of Central Florida here staying pretty dry right now. Had a little bit of passing accident earlier on, but you see the 12-hour rainfall, a little bit of Alachua and Putnam and the like, but very little, not really enough, you know, to really almost know, but I mean, anything helps, sir, if it's not, you know, filled with lightning or severe weather. But you see how it's quiet right now on Stark Lake City. It's in the 80s, but, you know, you see some of the cool air further back and, you know, much cooler air further up. I mean, you see 40s in parts of northern Alabama. Tennessee's cold. Got that cold air there in western Kentucky. And you can see that. That's, you know, some of that's on the way. I mean, we're going to have lows in the maybe upper 20s here around Stark on Tuesday morning, Veterans Day morning. You need to be prepared. Need to have a heavy jacket on hand or multiple layers. You know, those Veterans Day activities, you know, of course, just no reason to cancel them, but just be prepared for some winds and cold air here. Some folks that are really in a more maybe frail state may not want to go to them because that is the coldest we've seen in many months, and it could kind of mess with things. But for the most part, it's probably a situation where you just need to be prepared here, prepared for the wind, blowing tents around and the like, things around. Really, if you had like a tent, you probably don't really want to have that up like at a Veterans Day thing because you want the sun out to warm people up versus having a tent around and it's all shaking around with that wind. And if it is up, you got to make sure it's secure. Very, important to make sure it is secure there as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things there. Because this wind will be pretty nasty. It's going to be cold there. It's just going to be a nasty, cold day, but the sun will be out. That is this, for Tuesday. So, if you're out in the sun, it's not going to feel as bad, but still that breeze, that cold air, definitely telling the weather story. Another new warning, Jack's office is issuing some pretty small polygons based on some different micro scale areas of weather interest there with the overall radar signatures. North Central Eccles, Central Clinton counties there till 5:30, mainly rural areas of the indicated zones. 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts, quarter-size hail. It's a thunderstorm located 11 miles east of the community of Mayday, or 15 miles northeast of Statenville, moving northeast at about, it looks like, 30 miles an hour. So what we're going to do, we have these warnings, we're watching them, we don't have anything tornadic, it doesn't seem right now. If we do, we'll jump back in immediately. This is how we're doing it last little bit on the other stream there. If we get anything crazy, we jump back in immediately. Got a couple hail reports, Cairo and Coolidge there, Grady, Thomas counties respectively. Hail to 7/10 of an inch in diameter, and in Ocklawahnee and Thomas County, gutters were filled with hail to 7/10 of an inch in diameter. Heavy dime-sized hail fell at the intersection of Rupp and it looks like Pummy Road there in Ocklawahnee. It's around 350. So sometimes you can get a lot of this hail, even if it's not quite a severe size. It can still be very impactful. So a busy day of weather impacting some of our area here. Other areas staying dry and in the cold. So it's going to be the story for all of our 62 counties. This is going to be a huge drop from near record highs to maybe record lows in a span of 36 hours. So be prepared. Protect people, plants, those pets. For Tuesday morning, the pipes for most of us should be all right. There might be a few really cold spots, like in rural Georgia, that get to that criteria where it's almost or maybe even a hard freeze. I don't know they would actually issue that formal warning, but I think they've changed some of the criteria on that anyway. But as we're looking, I don't know if we'd quite get the hard freeze criteria with the pipes, but still. It's going to be something, sometimes the freeze warnings after a while don't get issued either once you have the first warning spots, but we have a freeze watch because we're going to have a first freeze for many of us Tuesday, mainly a regular freeze. Wednesday morning we could have some pretty cold air as well. So, it's not going to be a, extended period, but it's not going to just be a one-night thing either. If the Wednesday down Wednesday morning, some areas could have more frost even. So that's something to be very mindful of. Again, a cold snap, like what we haven't seen the contrast of in a while that I can remember here, to go from so warm to so cold so quickly, from like summer to winter here in the span of, really less than 36 hours, but from those high highs to those low lows. What a big difference. What a big deal. The severe weather is, important to track, but the cold is the big story. Assuming we don't get anything like tornadic out of this here this afternoon, but just, an isolated spot is more impactful with hail here and there and wind damage here and there, and we got to track that. So we'll be back at 5:30 with more. Keep it tuned to Cloud Weather. We're going to keep you guys up to date here on this situation. Again, we're trying to watch things for you here in the Weather Center. We're trying to keep you guys up to date on the meteorological scenario, and we'll have more here at 5:30 at the bottom of the hour, unless we need to pop back in sooner. Stay tuned and stay safe. meteorologist Casey Cloud jumping back in here at the bottom of the hour. It's 5:30 here on this Sunday. We're tracking some severe thunderstorm warnings here, south central to southeast Georgia. Another one of most, interest right now looks to be that one getting into ward parts of Charlton, Clinton, where it looks a little bit more ominous here in some ways, in that it's a little bit more in an environment to thrive versus some of the accent a little bit further back. It's more in terms of that linear mode. To thrive, what I mean by that is, unfortunately, to be a little bit more powerful in terms of severity. So we've gotten a lot of reports still on these storms, power lines down in the north end of Lowndes County. They're 5 miles east of Payhira there. That was around 5 o'clock. Also, power lines down near Valdosta State University about 5 o'clock there. So definitely not, fun reports coming in. Let me check the power outage numbers there right now in Lowndes County after these storms have come on through. And according to Power.us right now, it's looking like 3,226 customers are in the dark right now in Lowndes County. We have about 911 out in Thomas County and 482 customers in the dark in Grady County, also 44 in Lanier County in Georgia. So again, that's kind of the storyline right now with these storms as they're moving through. We've been tracking them for several hours here, the last few hours, as they're kind of impacting different parts of our Georgia area in general. A little bit of Florida here at times. We do have a little bit of Madison County under a warning till 6 o'clock at this point in time. The worst though has really been into Georgia. We have that one warning there, Madison, Brooksville, and Lowndes till 6 p.m. Charlton, Clinton, Ware till 6. I know as we started to lose that daytime heating, that might help to weaken some of this, though. The way this is more on the edge like this, that could be an issue as we're looking there, later on, Winnaker up all the way through Camden and into Glenn County around Brunswick there maybe. So let's check the angle on this movement. By the way, I see our delayed report, Boston, Georgia, Gulf Coast, hail about 4:24 p.m. Again, we have had a slew of reports today, but you can kind of see this is headed more, and I know the statement, let me see what they're saying here. So click on it, they are saying northeast now with the movement. It's over Pretty Roy right now. I mean, you're getting around the Okefenokee Swamp, and that could, though, in a way, that environment there could help to make sure the storm, is unfortunately a little bit, more powerful, and that not going to strengthen maybe over that area too much, but, it could help maintain it some, as we're looking as we're tracking things, because we are getting at sunsets. I don't know if it was really strengthened a whole bunch, but going right over the Okefenokee, it could be pretty, nasty right around these areas once it gets past that zone or Winnaker and the like there as we're looking toward US 301 there in southeast Georgia. So again, just have to be pretty mindful of that as we're watching things here. Again, definitely overachieving, these storms for some of us. So some of us haven't really seen, Stark haven't seen anything. It's sunny out there. It's outside at 78 degrees there, and, it's not, anything that is too crazy in terms of these weather conditions here at all. We are going to get crazy weather, though, in terms of the cold for that Tuesday morning. Again, a freeze watch, going to be more than likely upgraded to a freeze warning for that Tuesday morning here as we look ahead in toward the timeline. For Stark and most of our area, if it's not a freeze or a frost, you're going to have that wind chill factor. Everybody in our 62 counties are going to be feeling some very cold conditions Veterans Day Tuesday morning here as we look ahead in toward the timeline. So just something to be aware of here. The storms today are impacting some of us pretty badly, but on Tuesday morning, the cold and the, windiness is going to impact everybody to varying degrees. You're riding about, it's going to impact you. Got to wear those jackets and be prepared. But we've had just a slew of warnings here as we're looking. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 severe thunderstorm warnings here. That's the most we've had in a while here in our area. A slew of warnings here. Again, overachieving some. We need the rain in these areas, but we don't want the severe weather. And we have had just, again, a bunch of reports here of hail and wind at this point into our southwest and south central Georgia. That's where things have been focused. Looks like if I add them up, and some of those aren't in our area. We had a couple with Canby and Baldwin, but it would be 13 if you count those. Well, and one in Jackson County outside of our area. But let's see, that's 10 different reports in our area, 10 our counties. We've had 10 different damage reports. That is a lot. You know, Thomas and Grady and Cook and Seminole and Decatur and Lowndes counties. That's where the damage has been there in Georgia. Let me pull up the visual here with the covered map to say, you know, where those counties are. It's, you know, left on the map here, you know, north of Tallahassee, not in Tallahassee, as there have been really inclement weather today. But, you know, some of the other areas, it's been a different story. I mean, you see on the map there's Seminole County. We had a report of a dogwood tree down by strong winds. That was earlier on at about 2:27 this afternoon. So, you know, getting things going there as we were looking at things, as we were tracking things. You know, it's been very active, very busy, obviously, as we give you guys the very latest information here to protect you, your friends, and your family. But that was just the tip of the iceberg here. As we're looking and as we're tracking things, after that we had damage there as I'm going through the timeline. 243 in Brinson and Decatur County. A photo of a fence damage there in that community. At 255, we told you about that 70-mile-an-hour wind gust there at the Decatur County Airport in Bainbridge. You know, it looks like about that same time there, we started getting some hail reports just before in Grady County and Spence at 243, an inch and a quarter north of Cairo. At Thomas County and Meigs at 245, an inch and a half in diameter. Let's see, make that 315. We had hail in Thomasville, an inch and a half in diameter. Similar time there in Decatur County at 310. We had large oak trees down, power lines down, and some roof damage. And then we had Thomas County, Boston hail there, an inch in diameter. Cook County, inch in diameter hail there. We had a higher area 5 miles east in Lowndes County at 3 o'clock there. Or no, make that 4 o'clock there. I have to do these time conversions. You know, make that 5 o'clock. Okay, the time conversions, because it's when I look at these, they're in UTC time. It's Zulu time. It's global time. So I have to do the conversions, and we just did a time change last week, so I'm gonna confirm the correct way because the global time doesn't adjust for the hours. So 20Z for most of the year is 4 o'clock, but 20Z now is 3 o'clock from, you know, early November into March. So when it shows like 22Z, then that's, you know, it would be 6 o'clock if it was earlier on. You can't go the opposite way with this either, but it's 5 o'clock now there for Lowndes County. So that's when that came on through, that 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time here, 5 p.m. on this Sunday, November 9th, 2025. So again, trying to give you guys the very latest here on this Sunday, on this active day here of weather for some of us, trying to keep you guys up to date here as we go back over to the other map. Again, that one storm there really stands out in toward southeast Georgia now, and toward technically the Jacksonville television market. You know, now I know we cover all these different counties, and sometimes it's, you know, we don't think about, like, you know, where are you on the map? Well, this is the Jacksonville market. We cover more than this Jacksonville market, but this storm here is in a rural area over the Okefenokee, but it is strong looking. Those winds there about 55, 60 miles an hour. And we'll probably get another warning downstream on that. It's for just wind and hail, not rotation right now. Sometimes they can put a tornado possible tag, and do sometimes put a tornado possible tag on this. We don't necessarily see that, but you see how it's moving. And you see some of the axis behind seems to be kind of weakening off, but that leading axis seems to be pretty robust here. So we have to be very mindful of that as we're continuing to give you guys the very latest here as we continue to track things. You don't see a lot of rotation, thankfully, but we have this nasty weather moving northeast there at 40 miles an hour, 60-mile-an-hour wind gust, and half dollar-size hail. So just to kind of give you an idea, in 1 hour, it could be somewhere around Brunswick, give or take. That red square is about, you know, an hour away is where we could have it. So in this next hour, this could go over Winnaker and some of these areas here. You know, maybe Woodbine and then up toward Brunswick. So that's where that's headed. You need to remain alert here. Let's check to see. I want to check wind directions. We have some contrasting wind. We have to be kind of a little careful then when you have these contrasting winds. Sometimes that can spin something up here. Because we do have the contrasting winds right here at the coast. You know, with the different boundaries involved and like. So we'll just have to see. Because that is interesting. You have the, you know, the different winds there right in that area. And, you know, as we're just kind of giving you guys the very latest here It's, right when you get into the coast, that can be an issue sometimes. So again, we'll have to just be mindful of that as we are seeing, some parameters in play here as we give you guys the very latest updates. So it's 5:40 p.m. Well, we're just gonna keep you guys up to date. We're gonna keep you guys informed. Trying to keep you guys, up to date on these weather scenarios here. I'm just going through some things here real quick into the Weather Center, looking through some information. Just trying to get an idea here. Everything that's happening. It's so important to stay on top of things, obviously. Always want to be, giving you guys everything you need here to protect you, your friends, and your family. Just trying to stay on top of all the latest weather updates. Let me see if there's any questions or comments. I don't see any here right now. But again, I appreciate everybody tuning in here and trusting me. A little over an inch in diameter there right now, and the hail right there. This is more the Okefenokee. We have this other line, those 6 with a warning, but that's not being extended east into Eccles County there. So it's mainly about this one right here. Again, headed toward Winnetka. Give me that early heads up there. We'll get a warning into that area, I'm sure, pretty sure. And then all the way up to Brunswick later on, it's a possibility as well. We'll have to just remain alert here with this accent, moving on through, moving on in here as the timeline does go along. So again, we're just trying to give you guys the very latest here on all of this as the scenario progresses. So some pretty nasty echoes on the radar picture here. And we're going to keep on tracking this. I'm going to leave the radar up, and I'll be back at the top of the hour with another update. And we'll probably have new warnings by then. If it's a tornado warning, though, we'll jump in way, sooner or whenever it happens. If it's right then, of course we would then. But the point is, we'll be on as soon as it happens if we get a tornado warning. But otherwise, be back on here at the top of the hour, 6 o'clock, with more information. So keep it tuned here to Cloud Weather. We've had a lot of reports there, north of that Florida line into Georgia today, and we could still get some more all the way through Winnetka and through the Brunswick area here over the next little bit. So be mindful here of these storms. All the damage reports further out, and then you're watching here to progress, and we're watching everything as it does progress here across the covered area. We're just trying to keep you guys up to date on the situation. We'll be back here in about 15, 17 minutes, unless we need to be back in sooner here with more information. We'll leave this running. Stay tuned, stay safe, and if you're in these warning areas, make sure you're inside. If you hear any thunder, make sure you're inside and away from windows. Back here at the top of the hour at 6 o'clock. I'm meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center. We're still tracking severe weather here across our Georgia County. That's where the focus has been today. If you're just kind of checking in now that, the sun's gone down, you're just getting in. I know in Florida, most of our areas, there's been a few passing showers or here and there, maybe a lightning strike or something, but not too big of a deal. I mean, we've had a couple warnings kind of clip the northern Florida counties a little bit, but the focus has been in Georgia here. That's where we've really seen some wicked weather today. It's been a really nasty day here as we're tracking things. I know we were talking about the risk going up a little on late Thursday, but this is definitely overachieved even more than that. I mean, on our update late Thursday for today, this is definitely overachieved. I mean, I think we're talking about 10 warnings, something like that here. The latest warning goes for Brantley, Charlton, Ware until 6:15. A severe thunderstorm located 8 miles northeast of Stephen Foster State Park, moving east at 50 miles an hour. 60-mile-an-hour wind gust and half dollar-sized hail. Race Pond and Winnaker, there are hail damage to vehicles as expected. Expect wind damage to roof siding and trees. So again, we're just continuing to give you guys the very latest on this here. Even some weak rotations showing up now. I know we're right around the Okefenokee, and isn't something that maybe you would see too much here, but this going right over that area here, it's definitely helping it, keep itself together. I mean, for a little bit as we get past sunset, maybe this will start the weekend, but it's right now it seems like it's on the uptick. Let's go to the ZDR. I know that's something we don't see very much on here, but upscale growth, we have some of that here. This is just the worst of it. It's just south of Winnaker, but Winnaker is getting into it too there. But yeah, this is some legit rotation. Let's see, they just updated this. No tornado possible tag yet, but that's how I would say the closest we've been to getting one of those tags, which would be just shy of getting, if you got one of those, which you don't have yet, just shy of getting a tornado warning. So I need to be kind of careful with this here as we're tracking things. Let me see if there's any cameras. I don't necessarily think there is. Winnaker, by the way, as we're looking at the geography of this, I mean, we're in northern Charlton County with that, and, just south of there, and then north of Folkestone, though, is where the worst of this is. This is north of Folkestone, for you guys wondering there. I know Folkestone's, a place where some folks, go into Georgia just, to kind of, go up to, years ago, this was a storyline in the news. I mean, it's probably 15, 20 years ago. People would go to Folkestone or St. George or Fargo or somewhere in Florida to get like certain kind of lotto tickets. That's not really a storyline anymore. But anyway, the point is that as we're looking and as we're tracking things, we're, watching the situation there. There's new cameras in Winnaker, right? Let's just see here. I'm doing this. It's a one-man band, so bear with me. I'm just making sure. As we're looking there, 301 and some of the different other roads here in that area. Winnaker there is on US 301 north of Folkestone. Trying to see if it, shows up on this map even. It's so small. It's, not even showing up on some of my maps here. As we give you guys the very latest here. So I'm just trying to give you an idea. Now we're getting to the, point where it's going to be darker. So, you might see distant lightning on camera away from there. I'll look in. Let's go Brantley County then. Yeah, we'll go up Nahunna's way. Let me zoom out and see. So it's to the south is where we have a lot of this. Or if you have a focusing camera, but happen to want to north would be the ideal spot for this. We're just going to continue to give you guys the very latest. But we'll go to Nahunna, Brantley County camera to try to give you an idea of this here, because yeah, you can see some flashes from it. So let's pull that in to Georgia 511 perspective. You can see what's appeared to be, flashes of lightning there at points. And let's just make sure that's not there's some light. Sometimes at night it can get a little bit confusing here as we're looking. Oh, that's lightning there, it looks like. So yeah, that's telling that weather story there for sure. As we're giving you guys the very latest here on this situation. Again, a very active day, obviously. We'll look from Folkestone, and I can't control these cameras or anything like that. I mean, these are Georgia Department of Transportation cameras, Georgia 511, but yeah, I can see some flashes of lighting on this one. So let's go ahead and pull that in. Look at the top right of the screen here, I see, and yeah, there you go, you can see it. Again, we're looking here, this is State Road 23, US 301 South there at US 1. And US 23, I know, getting more delayed reports, Grady County earlier on, dime-sized hail with some quarter-sized mixed in near Womble and the Griner Road, the intersection there. But yeah, a lot of lightning here with this activity. This storm seems to be on the uptick. This reminds me, let me look at the velocity again before I say it. I mean, what I was, let me just look here. I'll tell you what I'm saying. Yeah, this kind of reminds me a little bit that storm we had right there the day of it was the national championship, Florida basketball game. We ended up, and we had no warnings for a while. Then we had it coming on Waycross with a tornado, but it's not quite to that level. But let's check Jack's radar because it doesn't look as tight, and that's probably a closer radar now. So let me double check. Yeah, the Jacksonville radar is now the closer radar, so it gives you the best reading. But there is a hail core in here. This is headed toward, so Winnebago's getting into this, but it looks like based on the latest scans, this is adjusted a little south. So now more like the community of Jerusalem, Georgia, and or maybe toward Tarboro and White Oak there. Leaning more into parts of Camden a little. Let me check though and loop it because it could just be a little off track for now. Let me see. So we'll watch and kind of watch that angle there as we give you guys the latest. I'm just trying to get the angle on this movement. So yeah, the White Oak community, basically across I-95 in Camden County. As we're looking, I know, by the way, we haven't had that much severe weather this year. We had the winter weather in January, of course, but, I mean, overall, of course, there's been some days, but not for a while. But those Georgia cameras, that's something fairly new, the live views. You still only have those on the Florida cameras, so that's definitely helpful, and hopefully I'll get more and more of those, cameras from the government there to be able to, so those on the air here for you. I mean, those are, cameras that we're able to sell, allowed to sell versus like, can't just sell, random TV station cameras. We don't have the access for that. We're not allowed to do that here by copyright and the like, but we can tell you the Georgia 5-in-1 cameras, the Florida 5-in-1 cameras and the like here to give you an idea of the storyline here as we're looking and as we're tracking things. So, again, let me go ahead and keep looking. That looks a little weaker. That doesn't remind me as much of that storm in April there around Waycross now. It's just, it's holding together. It's been an impressive and not a great way. I mean, with these storms holding together, impressive slew of storms. I mean, we've been tracking them for several hours. I mean, that first severe thunderstorm warning, getting to Seminole County, literally, we've been tracking warnings. At least there have been tornado warnings. We haven't had any tornado warnings, but we've been tracking warnings all across South Georgia since 2:05 this afternoon. That was when the first one got issued, and it's now 6:08. That's 4 hours. I mean, we kind of were alluding to this potential earlier on when we saw some things come together. And so in a more isolated corridor, sure. And, areas in North Florida, you're wondering, like, what was all the fuss? I know back in 2018, we had a bunch of tornado warnings over certain parts of our area in December, but some areas didn't really get much precip. We had a significant tornado in, southeast Georgia there, close to the coast there in December of 2018. And that type of pattern, at least we're not seeing those type of parameters in play. But, like, look at the storm total rainfall here. Stark, nothing. McClenny, nothing. But as you get into South Georgia, you do see some precip, and we want that without the severe. Some areas south of Waycross, 2 inches. We are in a drought. We need rain badly. I mean, very badly here. So that's something that we will take. We'll take the rain, but we don't want the bad, here with this. So again, as we continue to give you guys the latest updates here, continue to give you guys the latest information. I do want to say that Georgia Drought Monitor, because this will help that some. I'm going to move something over real quick on this because it's not, I know we can keep our logo up there. I need to center that there. That's will help some at least. Let me go ahead and pull this on in. I just want to go ahead and, people that weren't watching earlier on here. Oh, that did not work. I don't know why that didn't work, but okay. Let me go ahead and reset that. Bear with me. Okay, that was the wrong mode. Okay, let's try that again. That's what happens when we've been on for a while here. It's been a day that's overachieved. Let me go ahead and that's still not working. Okay, bear with me. I think I'm hitting the wrong button here. I don't see my other button in here for some reason. Maybe the third time will be the charm. Let's see. There we go. Okay, I know it's getting cut off a little bit. You will see the storyline predominant here, the extreme drought. So again, Just trying to give you guys the very latest here on all this situation, as it does progress here. I know we've been talking for a while with this, but we do need the precip here. We do need the precip into South Georgia as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things here in toward the weather center. So again, we're just trying to give you guys the very latest here on the different developments, obviously. Very important to do that here. Again, the extreme drought here in towards southeast Georgia and central Georgia and southwest Georgia. This is helping some with that. Next up there will be on Thursday, though. It may not be a lot, even because we're just so far in the hole. But, we don't want to severely go with it. We've had a lot of hail, a lot of wind reports in the ward, especially southwest and south central Georgia at this point. Southeast, some of them, still to come. See how bad, this has been out that way. But again, just trying to give you guys the very latest here on the different developments. I know I'm just trying to keep you up to date here, obviously, as the situation does progress here. We're going to go ahead and let me take it out of this mode here real quick. We'll go ahead and take it out of this mode here. And I'm just going to go ahead and keep on looking here at some more information. Just trying to keep you informed on the different developments. That's the rainfall, by the way, if you're wondering what that is, to show you where people have gotten that precip here, which we desperately need, obviously. We desperately need that as we're looking at the overall meteorological picture. So again, a new warning now at 6:45 for Camden, Brantley, and Charlton. So that's extending that further on over. And we're going to give you the details and particulars on that here in just a moment. Give you the particulars on all that here in just a moment. And we're giving you guys, all those different updates here. All those different updates. It's very imperative here to stay on top of things in toward the weather center. So again, we're just trying to be, cognizant here. Okay, the warning now for areas like Woodbine, Jerusalem, Georgia, and Tarboro, Georgia, till 6:45. So let me go ahead and zoom back in here. This is going to be for 60-mile-an-hour winds, quarter-size hail. So I'm talking about 6:12. It's the thunderstorm was located 9 miles east of Race Pond, or 11 miles north of Folkestone, moving east at about 40 miles an hour. 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts, quarter-size hail there. Radar indicated Woodbine, Waverly, and Tarboro here. As we're looking at things and as we're tracking things, we're going to look at the wind mode here on the velocity. Again, we're trying to watch this to set it right toward that Georgia community of Jerusalem here. And then eventually over toward Woodbine to Tarboro to White Oak. So a little bit, south and some of the adjustment. There's still going to be some potential around Winnaker to Waverly, though. And even up toward Brunswick here as we are looking and as we are tracking. So, you just got to kind of stay, aware here of the scenario. Stay aware of the situation here as it does evolve. Again, we're trying to let you guys know here what's happening in toward these different backyards. Again, in Florida, it has been calm, for most of us today. Warnings of technical eclipse. In Georgia, not so much here. As we're watching the overall meteorological scenario. So, again, we're just continuing to give you guys the very latest. We're trying to keep you informed here. That cold snap, though, coming up, that's going to be a big story. Honestly, even though this is impacting, these storms, even a few more people than we were thinking coming into, today here for our Georgia counties. By the way, there is an advisory out here. Let me check this real quick. Okay, I think, did it go away? Okay, yeah, that went away. Just watching to see if we didn't have any, maybe trailing storms. But let me go ahead and put up, this is your final weather watch. That's going to be an issue, sure, as we're looking at things. We got to be careful about that tomorrow, but, especially in the Florida zones where I was focusing, because that's where they haven't got as much rain. There's going to be wind and cold coming here. That cold is coming here, unfortunately, but But I really want to see here, and I have to manually do this here. Let me go ahead and just bear with me. I gotta change this over because I can't have them really both on at the same time. It would be kind of hard to see. You know, some of these alerts, sometimes there's other alerts that are more pertinent, and, you know, I don't, but these are both pretty pertinent, especially the freeze. So, you know, when I show one, though, I still don't want to see the other because they'll overlap and it'll kind of get weird. But let me go ahead, and you won't be able to see good, but I put the freeze alerts on here, and then I'll go ahead and take off our fire weather watch, you know, as we're looking and as we're tracking things. I'm going to update our system here, and then now I'll go ahead and just try to reload that if I can. Bear with me here. Just have to do a couple things here live on the air, but been with you a while as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things here. There's your freeze watch coming up. That's a wide area. You know, that's potentially going to get those 32 or below conditions for a little while. That's going to cause damage to your plants if you don't protect them. That's Tuesday morning, Monday night. Not tonight. It's going to be in the 40s tonight. Some areas maybe a little more than that, depending on where you are in the western zones. But tomorrow night, that's tonight. And Tuesday night could be as well. As you know, but tomorrow night's going to be that first freeze that really impacts so many of us more than normal. In that, you know, just earlier than normal, but also to get this much of us in one night. To get that first freeze the same night. It's kind of unusual here to go from near record highs to record lows. That's what's coming. We have a freeze watch. We're talking about severe weather. We're talking about 75 right now. It was warm in the night. Last night we're going to be talking about, you know, very cold conditions. So as we're looking here, as we're tracking things Tuesday morning, be prepared, bundle up. Veterans Day, the activity outside. It's going to be chilly. So be very, very, you know, cognizant of that. Very aware of that. As we continue to give you guys the latest and see that a freeze watch there in play. Now, the latest on this, as we get past the Okefenokee, granted, I know we had that storm in Bainbridge way earlier on that, you know, it didn't look that impressive, and then we had a gust of 70, so I don't want to write this off, but it looks a tad weaker, but you still got to be taking precautions. White Oak Woodbine here, and this warning goes with 645. Damaging winds, large hail. We continue to kind of repeat some of the same stuff, and it's not a tornado situation. We've been on for, you know, hours here. The first stream, the second stream here, continuing things, and so we're going to take a break here, catch our breath, and be back at 6:30. We're going to leave the radar running, so we're going to leave that on up here. You can kind of see how things have progressed. I might go ahead and just, since, you know, we're, you know, getting close to the edge of this anyway. I mean, we don't have to see the Atlantic, really. I'll just kind of see some of this here just progressing somewhat. You know, that movement across that, you know, state of Georgia, the Peach State here, all these different yellow boxes, you know, have been the story here today that's progressing hour after hour. All these different warnings that we've been tracking, that we've been monitoring here. Definitely, you know, pertinent and definitely important to keep in mind as we're giving you guys the very latest. You see that? And then we just, I'll go back just so folks, when they're like looking at the stream, see Brunswick, so they at least get an idea of where the vicinity this is headed, you know, what vicinity this is headed. So we're just going to keep on watching. I'll be back in about 10 minutes with more, so keep it tuned. And those who's not read, this wasn't, you know, one of those days we're really, you know, hyping up, but it's still been pretty impactful for some folks in southern Georgia. So we'll be back here in about 11 minutes. Not tornado-wise, it doesn't seem. Haven't had any tornado warnings, but we've had just so many severe thunderstorm warnings. Those yellow boxes, some of those have even been considered considerable damage threats with the hail and the wind. So, you know, just got to be mindful of all that, and we'll have more here in about 10 minutes at 6:30, the bottom of the hour. Stay tuned. Stay safe. meteorologist Casey Cloud jumping back in here at 6:30 on your Sunday on this 9th day of November 2025. I know we're still tracking that severe potential for isolated parts of the region here, so we just got to remain alert as we keep on dealing with this here in towards some of those South Georgia zones. So it's been, confined in terms of the geography story with the severe weather, but we have that freeze coming Tuesday morning. That's going to be very widespread, so we got to remain alert for that. But right now, we have that warning. Let's go ahead and pause this here. I'll stop the loop, and you'll be able to see what we're dealing with here. And I'll just put on some of the different modes. You can see there's a little bit of accent further back, but the big accent is here northeast of Folkestone. And we're getting, let's see if there's rotation on this. Right at the coast, sometimes you can get a little spin up, but we have a rotational signature on here. I don't necessarily see the spin now that the system is alluding to. So, again, we'll have to be careful, though, right here around Woodbine and White Oak and right around I-95, this upticking on us a little bit because of different wind directions and the like. So, that's something to be mindful of here as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here. So just have to be, really paying attention there. Let me go ahead and look there. Do we have cameras in that area? No, not really. We have some to the south and north. Let me pull this one in. This is a little north of, it's not working. So sometimes the cameras, let's try one for the south. Let's see, some of these at night, it's hard to see stuff. We'll try this one around Harriet's Bluff. Maybe I think seeing some flashes here of lightning. Let's pull that in. I-95, Georgia Department of Transportation camera. As we're giving you guys a look here at the situation. Been tracking these storms for hours here in this confined part of the viewing circle. And you can kind of see what we're dealing with right now up that way. Again, somebody not really getting anything at all. I mean, it runs dark. It hasn't been, nasty at all. It's been sunny. I mean, it's been good weather outside, really a little warm at points. But, but everybody's going to get the cold weather coming in Tuesday morning behind this, storm system here. You see the lightning, though, right now. We're looking at things, and as we're tracking them, let's go ahead and jump back on over to the Doppler perspective, though. And let me go ahead and see the reflectivity headed toward I-95. Here's some of this. Eventually, this warning goes to 6:45. Probably get one more warning, I would guess, here on this to get us to the coast maybe to like 7 or 7:15. Probably a little more likely on the time frame. And then that would kind of maybe wrap this up as we're getting some hail potential moving across I-95 now here northeast of Woodbine there. That's where that greatest potential looks to be at. So let's go to winter mode on some of our other sources right now. I want to check the overall meteorological pattern because we do have some wintry weather further up into the country here in the overall storyline. You see that white stuff on the reflectivity. That is snow here in northern parts of Kentucky, around Louisville, for instance. And you see Indianapolis. I know they've been getting a lot of snow in parts of Indiana. South Bend was getting some starting late last night, and it's been more progressive. They're calling it heavy snow right now in the METAR report. During where Notre Dame is, 6 inches snow reported there around Saginaw, Michigan. So that's a half foot, obviously, and you have the lakes involved, and you have the overall pattern helping with some of this. You have some acts in there, southern Ohio, central Ohio snow. Some of this stuff's going to start switching over to snow flurries here in Tennessee and even North Georgia, North Alabama. As we look ahead into toward the timeline here, not expecting snow around our area, or anything like that. But let me put on let's put on the model in here. I haven't showed this to you guys in a while. Let's get close to sunrise tomorrow. And you see the flurry acts, and I know we're watching that here carefully. Taking off the current lighting, so this, makes it a little bit, easier. I know we have some, rain warnings out there if you look real carefully out here, like in areas south of Washington, D.C., but we just got a local marine warning, too, on cue out to Maha Sound at Fernandina Beach, so something we're seeing out that way. But again, we're looking here, these snow flurries here, and maybe, some snow shower to caught. I mean, I've been seeing a little bit more than that, maybe, but you know, it's hard sometimes to see how heavy this is on here, but looks like a little bit of a, you know, interesting event. I mean, in Tennessee tomorrow. Let me see how much they're forecasting here, because it's not easy at all to see this. In fact, I can just see what the model's showing. Let me progress it out. You saw Chattanooga there. I mean, even in some of the other times you're seeing some of this, but let's see what they're forecasting here. Tennessee Tech maybe getting some of this. Let's go. Yeah, that's not showing that much on the accumulations, even though it kind of looks like a little. Eventually, we start seeing an inch or something in 6 hours in here, and then, well, you know, in western North Carolina, the higher terrain, some areas could get a good bit. But you see here, this is early for this. I mean, you know, this is going to be tomorrow night here in North Georgia, maybe some snow around Gainesville, Georgia, not Florida. As we go ahead and look, and it's actually adding it up a little bit here. If you want to see some snow, I guess, you know, Veterans Day is on Tuesday. If you happen to, you know, have a chance to get up to North Georgia, be careful. But you might actually get to see some there on Monday night, tomorrow night there in North Georgia. So, you know, if you have kids and want to do that, I guess, if you're not, you know, maybe, you know, involved in like Veterans Day activities and the like, which, you know, obviously, you know, it's going to be very cold but it's going to be even colder, obviously, up there to be able to get snow in North Georgia like this. If you want to take the kids up there, I mean, it's not, you know, a sure thing. Atlanta, don't count on it in Atlanta. You got to go north of Atlanta to really, you know, count on it. I'm not saying you couldn't have a flurry in Atlanta, but, you know, if you're going to actually see snow with the kids here before Thanksgiving, not that far away, I mean, you go up here north of Dahlonega, Georgia, for instance, somewhere in here. This is not a guarantee, but it's on a couple inches in the model here, like around Blairsville and the like. So that's some snow accumulating here tomorrow night. I mean, that is only 300 miles as the crow flies from like Stark and our South Georgia county. I know we had snow yesterday, you know, as we were looking, you know, in Indiana, and then we were looking there with the snow there as we were, you know, looking back at January in our Georgia counties. So some folks have seen snow, you know, in our area recently, but, you know, like Waycross, they're only about 225 miles away there, you know, from some of this, if you're trying to see some snow. Again, we did just have snow in January in a lot of our Georgia counties. We had just the flurries here, but we did just get a beep on that, so we're going to break away from the fun stuff. Unfortunately, we're just going to do a warning. There's now a tornado possible tag. If you heard that beep, that's what that means here. A certain kind of beep if you heard it in the background. So not a tornado warning here, but we're talking about a tornado possible tag at 7 o'clock now. The other warning went away, but this warning does include Camden and Glenn. You know, these storms have been, you know, this one here, capable of inch-size hail, 60-mile-an-hour winds. We actually had now a confirmed report of 2-inch hail, egg-size hail at 3:45 this afternoon in Thomas County around the Quality community there. But yeah, this has some rotation maybe with it now, according to the service. Right, because of the winds. I mentioned it earlier on. We're starting to see it. You know, the winds switching directions. We literally showed it to you earlier on here with the boundaries involved. We have that turning of the wind here. This could get us to get a tornado in northern Camden here, folks. We need to be ready to get that tornado safe spot in northern Camden. No tornado warning yet, but you see, if you look, you have the wind coming out of the west here. These arrows out of the west, and then just go a little east, you have the wind coming out of the south, and that turning can lead to a possible tornado here. It's pretty rural, honestly, I think, where this is setting up. Which is good. I mean, that's, you know, there might be a few homes in there here or there, so, but it looks fairly rural. And then we do have an area out here, though. Let me get, you know, in here. We do have some spots potentially impacted. Let's be ready to have, you know, that tornado safe spot ready to go here in toward northern Camden and southern Glenn, in case this does get that red box, which would indicate a tornado warning here. Let me go ahead and see what we have. With this, I want to just kind of warn some people. Let me switch some things around here. I'm getting a little bit of a wind signature on here. Not overwhelming, but just the overall radar meteorology on the reflectivity. If this starts to get a bigger hook with the wind switching direction like this could lead to a tornado developing here. And yeah, this area right in here is where in very far southeast Glenn County there, folks. Southeast Glenn County. So, you know where that is. Well, let's go ahead and kind of explain that to you. So we're talking about maybe just north of, I'm trying to get my bearings before I say it here on the air, but, you know, because it's not, the city names won't pop up on the map, but just into Glenn County, maybe around St. Simon's Island-ish there. As we're looking and as we're tracking, let me just make sure I'm looking at this properly. It may be just south of there. Let's see. I think it's the other area. Oh, that's McKinnon Airport. I'm just trying to get my bearings here with the geography on some of the different maps. As the situation does progress here, we just have to remain alert on this. Just have to remain alert. Yeah, I think that's more on Jekyll Island. I think that'd be more Jekyll Island there. Just trying to make sure, in case this pops on up here. That's, you know, a pretty populated area. Vacation area. If some people are taking that 4-day weekend, they need to be ready to take those tornado precautions. But be inside and away from windows anyway here, in toward that area. Now, this is not far from Hickory Bluff now, but then kind of headed over toward Jekyll Island here. As we're looking at things over the next few minutes, this is, you know, potential. It could spin up into something. There's a tornado possible tag with this here. So we need to be ready on this here to get a potential tornado warning. So at 6:37, a severe thunderstorm was located near Waverly, or 7 miles northeast of Woodbine, moving east at about 45 miles an hour. Moving east at about 45 miles an hour. I do see Leo watching there on YouTube. I appreciate you tuning in there. We're just trying to give everybody the latest information across the 62 county area. You know, trying to keep everybody safe and informed with these inclement conditions. You know, just trying to stay on top of things here. And right now we're watching parts of southern Glenn and northern Camden here. That's where the focus of this is. We're trying to just keep you guys safe with this progressing here with the meteorology. Southern Glenn, northern Camden. So 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts, quarter-size hail. We're talking about Brunswick, St. Simon's Island, and the Warning, St. Simon's Island Village, Jekyll Island, Sea Island, and Dover Bluff. And they're saying weather service in Jack says remain alert for a possible tornado. Tornadoes can develop quickly from severe thunderstorms. If you spot a tornado, I know it is dark, so it might be kind of hard to just, you know, go into that basement or a small central room in a sturdy structure. You know, I mean, don't have many basements around here, but a small interior room away from windows, you know, that's where you'd want to go here in a tornado situation if we do get that to arise. If we do get that to develop here. Let's pull up, in fact, some tornado safety tips to get you guys prepared. So you can set aside that sturdy buildings already what you want to do with a severe thunderstorm warning in play, but you want to get as many walls between you and the outside as possible. Protect yourself from flying debris by putting on a football helmet, bicycle helmet, or baseball helmet. Then we have the shift in the winds. You saw it on our other mode there. We have the winds coming from one way and another, and this could cause, you know, the storm, as it, you know, gets into that environment here in that geographic spot, to start to twist. You have the boundary, you know, you have the Atlantic there, and then you have, you know, this system coming on in, the accent coming on in, and then, you know, we're having that boundary here, and things could turn along that, and we got to be very careful. Got to be very careful with that. Could have some hail damage if nothing else. This is Jekyll Island here, folks. And then we have this coming on in. We have that coming on in here. You see 50 one way, about 70 other way, but not anything tornadic right off. But we have to be very careful with this here. We don't have that much more time, you know, before this is going to clear the coast here. But we have this storm here that could end up getting a tornado warning. We shall see. It's not to that level yet. It is a severe thunderstorm warning situation right now. But again, that could change here as we're looking and as we're tracking things here. So let's see what we can kind of pull up on some of the cameras. Trying to pull some of them up. Looking here best I can. Ooh, this is nasty. Let's pull it up live. I know it's dark, but it still tells that story here. This is around 995. And, it's behind the heaviest, but it's still very heavy. Nasty inclement conditions here on I-95 there in Glenn County. Oh, wow. That was hopefully lightning. I hope that wasn't a power blast. That doesn't mean there's a tornado if there's a power blast, but it means that somebody's power is being knocked out, probably because of some damaging winds in the vicinity. I didn't necessarily, I wasn't looking straight on, but again, we got to be careful here. We could get a tornado because the winds are shifting direction here as we get closer to the coast. We haven't had much of that twisting here, but we have some of that now, and as this gets on that, we got to be careful. Again, this is a live look at a Georgia 5-on-1 DOT camera. You see these very volatile conditions. We're staying with this right now in case we do end up getting that red box, which would be a tornado warning. Right now it's a yellow box, a severe thunderstorm warning, but there's a tag. There's a notation that if this rotation intensifies, if it gets, aligned enough, we'll get a tornado warning. We haven't had one of those in a while. As we're looking here in our area, we haven't had many severe thunderstorm warnings, a slew of these like this in months. I mean, it's been a while here since we've had a slew of severe thunderstorm warnings like this here. And again, it's been focused into Georgia today. I mean, a little bit in Florida, but mostly Georgia. Mostly Georgia, but some of the polygons I know technically have clipped Florida, but it's been a predominant Georgia story here today. Again, these are not fun conditions. These are not ideal conditions as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things here. Again, this warning's going to go till 7. Camden and Glennis may end up being, let me check these other storms. Yeah, I think that'll probably end up being, for last warning of the day. Granted, we don't get a red box in this, for a short period to get a tornado warning, but they could do a quick one to 7:15, but they're going 7, and that looks to be where the worst of the wind. They'll be off the coast, and the hail potential at 7. So you see, there's Sea Island up here. These are some vacation areas, unfortunately. And before the cool weather comes in, people trying to maybe get out there. This is, some areas that are being impacted here. As we give you guys the very latest on the different developments. So Jekyll Island, this is where this is headed here. It looks like based on the geography, as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things here, up here is areas there, of course, further as we get just up there a bit. That is St. Simon's Island. So that's St. Simon's Island. That is Jekyll Island right in here. And you see here some of this wind coming. It's more, it seems, based on the Jacksonville radar view, it's going more toward Jekyll Island than St. Simon's, but still need to be inside and away from windows because of that lightning threat in St. Simon's Island and even Sea Island as well, as I pull this up here on the screen. So again, I know probably a decade plus ago, I know international leaders were coming to Sea Island there. That was a big storyline years ago. And, as, a big summit there, got Southeast Georgia, that area on the map, and even more so, obviously. But, of course, this is our area, and we're trying to keep you guys up to date. And we're looking to see if there's any type of tornado debris in here. I don't know if we'll be able to pick it out because this is probably some hail stone up in here, too. And it's not really well defined. That's why there hadn't been a red box, issued there, put on the screen by the Weather Service in Jackson because the rotation hadn't tightened up enough to issue a tornado warning. It looks kind of diffuse right now, at least from this angle. Let's check some other angles because, earlier Bainbridge got 70-mile-an-hour winds and it didn't really look like it on radar. Moody radar is showing a little bit more here of wind. Ooh, that's further up, so sometimes the angles can play tricks too. That's right over now, and sometimes it can get a minute or two ahead. That would cut out to be the angle distorting things, but it's coming right in on to Jekyll Island right now there in towards southeast Georgia. Again, Jekyll Island getting the worst of this weather here right now, it would seem, as we're looking at the different volumetric and radar scans here, different angles. We'll have to be mindful here of this. I'm looking from Charleston's radar too. Just trying to see how this looks on this storm. Again, there's not much else out there for, storm action. Some of this might try to intensify a little bit here as we look ahead, but not really expecting anything to get too crazy as we look ahead here in the timeline, you know, geographically and the like, which is good news, but we'll watch here just in case, obviously. You do have some of these supercell parameters in here too. So if we were to get a tornado, it could happen right there, but we're just looking at the broader perspective here. Just, you know, not a lot else there. One thing I will say, even if we don't get much or any rain around Stark, let's look at this boundary here. I want to load these frames in. You see this boundary here? That can give you some gusty winds. Let's see how it's, yeah, it's coming out from these storms. See, that could give us gusts of like 30 or 40. You know, how to head if it held together. It may not hold together like that. It might only, you know, if it did hold together, it'd be more like 20 to 30 with some gusts. But later on, it kind of be, you know, catching off guard. Sometimes with some of these storms, when they fall apart in certain parts of the line, that can kind of come from them. So, again, let's go ahead and keep looking at things, keep tracking them just a little longer here. Let me go ahead and check on some of the other modes here. I'm loading some of our other information. They're continuing to warn until 7. Tornado possible take hail. Now they're saying just under an inch, but wind to 60. A possibility there as we're looking and as we're tracking things. Let me go ahead and continue to give you guys the latest. I know. Let me go ahead and progress this modeling out here. You see how things look pretty weak. Maybe some showers later on. North Central Florida, 11 midnight there. As we're looking and as we're tracking things here, but nothing, you know, that looked overwhelming here at this point. I mean, you know, just remain alert just in case, but it didn't look overwhelming here, and that's some good news as we do look in the timeline here. So that's kind of what we're looking at hour by hour there, but then I'll go ahead and put on the temperature forecast. Let's put on temperatures for the 11th. We'll put 6 a.m. in here, and then let's pull some of that up. And you see the dark blues here. This is more aggressive than the other day. It's high res though. Some of these dark blues indicate upper 20s to, you know, below freezing here at 6 a.m. I mean, it could even be more widespread than this. And I'll go to 7 a.m. here. And you see how it spreads even a little bit more before 8 a.m. it starts to retreat some. But I mean, even this model here is really getting aggressive now for maybe a hard freeze northwest of Albany, 24, 25. So that might be where you do need to protect those pipes. You might need to protect those pipes there for Tuesday morning. Again, this is Tuesday morning. It's showing 24 in Quitman County, 24, 25 around Cuthbert. But in Tallahassee, it's just about plants, people, pets here. 30 in this model here, 29 Valdosta, 30, 31 Lake City, 28, 29 around Stark, according to my tool here. Some of these spots, a few spots are like 25 or 26 right here between Gainesville, Core, you know, kind of a cool backyard. But we're not quite at the point of pipes, but we're getting into it where you don't normally have your first phase for this many after being so warm to be this close to pipes on a Veterans Day holiday. And, you know, we're talking about mid-November. I mean, this is very unusual. It could be record-breaking lows or winds even. You could have some wind here even. I mean, these are sustained winds here in our model. You know, right around sunrise. I mean, we could have sustained even in these blue pockets of 10. Right at St. John's, maybe more. That can keep temperatures up, but it can also make things feel windier. Now, if we had gusts on here, it'd be still a lot more than this. But, I mean, you have it quite a bit over water, but this sustained wind here. So, I don't have the gust in here, but it just kind of tells you, I mean, you don't generally get that when it's that cold either. So, it's going to be a windy morning there. Veterans Day, you know, chill. I mean, it's not going to be the coldest, but it'll be one of the, you know, we had all those mornings in January, but and the like, but it's going to be one of the cooler mornings we've had in the whole calendar year, you know, so be prepared after we've had, you know, it hadn't been like that in months. We had February, mid-30s, I mean, the other day, but that's not really going to get you maybe some patchy frost. We're talking about widespread, you know, freeze here on Tuesday morning, widespread down there, and then it's something where, you know, Wednesday morning, some of that same storyline could continue as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here. So be prepared. I know it's going to be a chill, going to be chilly, very cold weather as we're looking ahead here. You know, that we're just not used to handling here, you know, just suddenly. So you got to be prepared. Make sure those space heaters, we haven't really talked about that, those space heaters, be very, you know, mindful of those because those can tip over and very quickly and start a fire, and that can lead to tragedy. That can lead to house fires and fatalities. So just it's really concerning. Actually, some of these heating systems, we could have fires, like a house fire Monday night if we're not careful here with some of these heating systems, whether the space heaters and the like. Just having to use them all of a sudden here, like this, just all of a sudden having that chill, having that cold snap coming on in, that can be very dangerous here. I know Tuesday night, by the way, folks, that are out of that FSU Florida basketball game in Gainesville. I mean, the way things are going right now for FSU and Florida football, basketball is kind of more, what's going for them. Especially like Florida, obviously coming off the national title. And I know they lost that first game, but they won once, by a bunch against UNF the other night. But that game's a huge game there Tuesday night in Gainesville. It's gonna be cold for folks that are out to that. Bundle up. And that game's, I believe, on the SEC network there at, the O'Connell Center in Gainesville, as we're looking there, as we're tracking things. But again, let me pull up this view again on this storm in southeast Georgia. The reason we've been talking for the last little bit. And once this gets off, we're going to wrap it up. So I don't really see anything else here. Unless we get another warning, we'll wrap the stream up, wrap the coverage up, and wrap, it up here. After having to be on for a while here. Just something, we've been tracking, we've been monitoring here. Just have to be paying attention, obviously, in these type of situations. You just have to be cautious, careful here with these severe situations. But yeah, this house fires could be an issue here Monday night. And we'll have the cold last Tuesday night as well. Maybe not as much wind, so that can allow, some areas possibly to get, down there a little bit more. Although Brooks County delayed report 1.75 inch golf ball size hail there earlier on as we're looking and as we're tracking things. And then, I'm just looking frost. Tuesday night's going to be a story for sure, because we won't have as much wind. Even if you don't get as cold, you're going to have frost. So we're going to have plant damage if you're not careful Monday night, Tuesday night. Be prepared, take precautions. Tomorrow, you have the day tomorrow to do it, and it's going to be down there. Very chilly. Even during the day, it's going to be pretty cool. Don't get me wrong, but not freeze, obviously, during the day. But, that's something that you have to be very prepared for here with these cold conditions coming on in here, coming on into the picture. You need to be prepared for that. These rapidly, cooling weather conditions. I see Thomas watching there on YouTube. Thanks so much for watching there, Thomas. And we had Leo watching. We had Nicole watching the other stream earlier on as well. I appreciate you guys tuning in and trusting me as we're giving you guys the very latest. Again, we're going to have a freeze warning tomorrow night for some of our area. Some of those northwest, southwest Georgia zones could get to a hard freeze criteria, really. And that's when you have to start worrying about the pipes. Most of us won't have to worry about the pipes, but a few of us will. So just keep that in mind here. But most of us, it's not about the pipes in Florida. I mean, really, if you really know your spot gets cold, it could be borderline if you really have vulnerabilities. But I wouldn't be, really concerned about those pipes. I'm not saying, couldn't have something burst somewhere. It's possible going from this warm to this cold. I mean, I guess it's possible here. I'm not 100% sure how the pipes work in that, you have so warm, you kind of hope maybe, sometimes run out water in there, but you got to hope maybe the residual will keep it, where it doesn't just completely, cool down. But it's something where, still you have to be mindful. At least this isn't going to be, hard freeze for everybody or something. But it's just something, that the contrast like this that you don't generally have here. You generally just don't have in our area, this rapidly like this to go all the way from the 80s to freezing, in November. Catching people off guard, I'm sure. We've been reiterating it though for a while. Just got to be prepared for that. As the warning's going away now here at 7 o'clock, as the worst of this is right at the coast still, kind of hanging there off, and right at it, right around Jekyll Island, Sea Island, and of course, getting in there between that to St. Simon's Island. So again, that's the storyline right now. I think we're going to wrap it at 7 o'clock Eastern. Now that warning, we have the marine warning. Still be careful. Not, good boating conditions here at all. I mean, you can have water spouts in there, could get a rotation to spin off more. in the more favorable conditions in the water based on some of the parameters, and that can easily overturn boats and create locally hazardous seas, according to the Weather Service and JAX. And small craft could be damaged at briefly higher winds and suddenly higher waves. Large hail could result in damage to, a structure out there over the water, small craft, bigger craft to some degree even. But, St. Simon's Island Village, St. Simon's Sound Buoy 9, St. Simon's Island, Jekyll Island, St. Andrews Sound, and Buoy F. So that's the storyline. Gusts to 40 knots, large hail, water spouts. That's becoming more coastal and water versus, land. But right at the coast, still could have gusts to 50 and land spouts there. In that little grayish area there, starting to see a little bit of a spin maybe there, right? It's just over the water now. So that tells the story with that. So we're going to wrap it. And you have interactiveradar.com/radar for, some different things you can look at there when we're not on the air. Whether you have warnings here or not, you want to see where rain is, and look at some forecast model stuff on there too. But it's going to be chilly. Veterans Day, those veterans out there, be bundled up there Tuesday. Important, to honor those veterans. My dad was a veteran there, and, it's very important to honor them there. Very, very, big deal, but you just don't want to get sick doing it. So make sure you're bundled up. Just make sure you're bundled up, wearing, those layers, and make sure that wind, is not bothering you. You might even, just depending on where you're at, have a hat ready to wear at times, and just be mindful there of that exposed skin out there. Especially if you're getting out there right at dawn, early in the morning there when we have maybe below 30 even in the air temperature, wind chills in the 20s, with a few spots in Georgia maybe getting wind chills in the upper teens, going from the 80s to some spots in the wind chill value numbers in the upper teens locally by Tuesday morning in South Georgia. But in North Florida, Stark could be, even a few degrees cooler than what we had the other night, maybe 28 maybe for Stark Tuesday morning. Outline areas, depending on how the wind impacts things, might, if it died down more, then it could get a few degrees cooler. If not, well, then Wednesday morning it might be like 30 in town, but then it could be like 26 or something, 27. We'll see. I'm just, just doing the math in my head here. 26 would start to get a hard freeze, but, the rural area, it could get a couple degrees cooler if that wind dies down and we allow, things to not be mixing as much, and you have more of that, cooling to take effect. You have the clear skies, and you don't have the concrete around and the like. So when you have more wind, you have more mixing, and it keeps the city and the rural areas up a little bit. The wind, spreading things, and the temperature difference is not really too notable. But, the concrete areas, the town areas like Stark Inland, in town, versus like where we're at here east of town, we don't have as much concrete. When you don't have, the wind up, when the wind's up, it's not a big difference at all. But when the wind's down and you have the clear skies, you can see several degree difference in those temperatures here, like, 5 degrees from town to out here, and it's not that far away, rural eastern Bradford. So my point is, that can happen sometimes when the winds die down and you have clear skies. So that could be a story for Wednesday morning, maybe warmer in town than, Tuesday morning, but, rural, it's possible you actually get the air temperature, even if the wind chill isn't as cool, you can get that wind chill down a little bit more, you can get the actual air temperature down a little bit more, even if the wind chill isn't as big of a factor because there's not that much wind around. So different things to watch, different things to track, that freeze coming, for many of us that, will cause issues. We'll have to watch it in the spring too. Need to have this rain. Not getting much in Florida, even though we've had all these warnings in Georgia. We're going to have fire concerns if we're not careful here, because, things have, be really vulnerable as we look ahead in the spring if we're not careful and don't get precip here. You're getting plants, some of these to die off here, and we really need precip. Georgia's been getting more than we were expecting, and those areas do need it, but Florida does need it too. We haven't really had much, and there's a fire weather watch tomorrow out toward the Tallahassee area because of the low relative humidity, the winds being up, and the cool conditions here are just so dry, low dew point values. So, the humidity low, winds high, temperatures aren't high, but it still doesn't preclude fire formation. Of course, something unfortunately, causes a fire, and, could have been lightning today, could be, if it's human, obviously there can be, criminal implications to that. So, you know, but if there's something that starts the, you know, fire there, then, you know, the conditions unfortunately be very ripe, you know, for that spread there around Tallahassee especially. So be looking out. Do not be, you know, messing around with fire or, you know, even cigarettes, you know. Don't be just throwing it out those windows, you know, of your car, because that can be a trigger in more, you know, unfavorable, you know, conditions here in terms of, you know, firefighting, and more favorable in terms of fire spread. So you have to be very cognizant of that. But okay, that wraps it up for now. We're still watching the storm in Georgia here. Let me just pull up, and I know I'm switching some radar. We have a interesting thing out off of Brevard and the like, some rotation there. Waterspout probably in there, you know, as we're looking east of Brevard, but that's not coming this way. This is what we've been watching here. It's mainly getting over the water. It's not as impressive as that one, but it might get, you know, more impressive because conditions are more favorable over the water, even for that rotation to come into play with supercell composite values, even if you don't have the switches in the winds as much. But that's going to do it. We're going to wrap it. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for trusting me. I'm meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center. I'll be back late Tuesday unless we need to pop back in sooner. You know, if we get any more severe warnings here, you know, we'll be letting you know about them. I don't think we will, but we'll be watching, we'll be tracking, and, you know, we'll be watching everything here in the overall meteorological pattern for you. Have a great night. Stay safe.